Welcome to another episode of the Restoration Today podcast. I want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to this episode's sponsor, a network spanning all of the US and Canada, the TOMI Service Network. Consisting of members from multiple verticals, the TOMI Service Network provides members access to SteraMist technology, which is a powerful disinfection technology designed to adapt to any job site. Members also received marketing materials, member discounts, networking opportunities, and more through a new desktop and mobile app. Learn more today by visiting TOMIMIST, that's TOMIMIST.com, or by calling 800-525-1698. Hello, restoration industry. I am here very excited to be rolling out something exciting. We can all hold it up. Look at that. And this is the cover story of the latest CNR, the March-April issue. So we are talking about the restoration workforce survey that was just done by KnowHow. It is the biggest survey that has ever been done to the industry. They put together an almost 200-page book, which is crazy based on the results. And it is full color, full of amazing stats and information. So I'm thrilled to have it as the cover story. I am joined by Leighton Healy, who is the CEO of KnowHow. And I am joined by Travis Martin, who is the VP of Product and Marketing at KnowHow. They came from across the border to get to the RIA show, which is where we are right now. And we are going to talk a little bit about the book and the study and what they found. So I want to start with, I'm going to have you both introduce yourselves and share kind of your background a little bit. So Leighton, will start.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. So Leighton's my name, and Travis and I, we've been working together for quite a while. But before we were in workplace software, I spent 10 years in the trades industry. So I was an executive leader in a very large, very kind of well-known network across North America, and just drove consistency and really systematization across that network. You know, one of the biggest challenges is how do you keep the French fries tasting the same across these big networks. And so I came from a background of that. And that's probably the best way to introduce my background.
Yeah. And I'm Travis, VP of Product and Marketing. And Leighton and I have been working together for 7 years, building products together. And my background is in building stuff that people want to use, makes people's life easier, regardless of whether it's business or just outside of business, anything like that.
Better than building something people don't want to use, because there's a lot of that out there.
We tried that. It wasn't as
No, there's a lot of that out there. Okay, so where did the idea of this study come from? You guys did a study last year on reviews, right? And you went through 1,000 reviews or something like that to find out why people are leaving negative reviews and how the industry could kind of overcome that. So where did this idea come from?
Well, let me riff, and then why don't you fill in the gaps? But we're a very research-driven software company. You know, it's our ambition to really build an operating system that engages the new labor worker. And when we saw that high mark in November last year of the highest number of resignations ever recorded in the U.S. marketplace, just workers self-electing to walk off the job site. You know, there was a lot of, I think, very subjective, kind of anecdotal examples of what was happening. But, you know, we come from a very analytical background. And we say, look, we need to understand what's happening, because we truly believe that to be able to serve our customers, who are large, growing restoration companies, we need to be able to help them win with the restoration worker. And the question is what is going on with the restoration worker? And so we decided to say, we need to dig in and do what we do best, which is really get down to the root of the problem and launch some significant research.
Yeah. And just to build on that, you know, we discovered so many people in the industry, they see these trends and they go with their gut. They say, oh, workers are quitting, millennials are quitting because of X, Y, or Z, and they fill in the stereotype in their head. And we knew exactly. And we knew that the real answer was much more complicated, but just guessing or using our own biases was not going to be able to cut it. Right. And today's worker is demanding change, but if we don't know what it is, if we're not putting ourselves in the shoes of these workers, then we're going to get it wrong. And so many companies are getting it wrong as a result. And so we really saw this as the opportunity to stem that tide and take advantage of the fact that we're good at research. We know how to ask the right questions that influences our software philosophy head to toe. And we also wanted to know this information so that our customers would also be able to learn why is it that people are leaving their jobs, and what do they want to make them to stay.
Okay. I thought it was really interesting when I was first looking through the study before you rolled it out. The questions were so well written. You're not driving people toward any one answer. They're very open-ended, like you're exploring those answers. And then you guys managed to pull it all together and evaluate all those, which is mind-blowing to me. So how was your response rate? What was that like?
It was really good. Yeah, it was really good. So what we achieved was across the whole North America, we had responses from essentially every U.S. state. We had good representation from Canada. The study focused on the basically on the North American mass, and then more specifically, we were able to get a large, I would say, split across roles in companies, gender. We were able to get a lot of different demographic representation from age groups. And so when we dig into this study, and when you dig into this, it's not just, okay, yeah, there's a few kind of high mark, perspectives that are shared. It's women in this age bracket and these roles, this is what causes them to quit. And so hundreds of responses across all age categories, across all roles. And if we were to say that we bias a survey, Michelle, across one particular I would say demographic, there have been surveys done in the past on a smaller scale, largely representing the perspective of the owners. An important perspective, which is fine. But if you think about kind of being on set, like we're kind of filming this thing here, if you think about being on set, almost like all of a sudden kind of sometimes like a microphone would come in because the audio guy didn't do his job. What we did is we brought the microphone down and we biased it towards the worker. Yep. And then we said that's who hasn't had a real good chance at the microphone. And frankly, that is where we're seeing the most turnover in the industry. So long story short, hundreds of responses, every US state. I would say over how many roles?
We had over 12 different roles. Yeah. And so I'd say the fascinating thing was that it was not a secret that we were gunning for understanding that frontline workers' perspective. A lot of managers shared their perspective with us as well, which was helpful. And this was, I think, a surprise when we started the survey, was having a manager and a frontline worker answer the exact same question, but seeing the divergence in the response was fascinating. And so not to bury the lead or get too quick into it. So we asked, why do good people leave your company? And initially, the answers kind of slotted in everything from my team members suck sometimes, or the schedule is unpredictable, the workload is high. But as soon as we segmented it by the role, office staff, managers, frontline workers, that's when we found something that was, I think, like dangerous to be if we ignored it. And that's the fact that field workers, frontline workers say the primary reason that people in their role, that their perspective of why people leave, bad management. Managers ask the exact same question, why do good people leave your organization? They say, oh no, good people don't leave. It's the bad ones that leave. If they left, it's because they weren't good in the first place. And so you see this chasm form, right? Where the one group is saying, oh no, it's managers' fault. Managers saying, well, if field workers left, that's really on them. How are you going to resolve that if both groups just have each side that they're on and just throwing stones across the chasm?
Yeah.
Did you find any differences between generations and how they were answering? Like Gen Z was looking for something, millennials were looking for something, maybe Gen X was looking for something. We're in this interesting time period in the industry where a lot of the boomers are phasing out, right? Selling their companies. We're going through all the mergers and acquisitions, that phase right now. So what do you find between the generations?
Yeah. Let me share something I found to be really fascinating. So the common wisdom on Gen X and especially millennials is they care less about salary and more about making an impact. They want a good team culture. They want to know that they're doing something that's important. Money is not that important to them. Among Gen Z, so younger than millennials, that trend is actually reversing. And on page 148, for anyone who gets the book, there you go. Thanks. The number one thing that Gen Z workers are looking for in a role is salary. And you say, why is that? Well, they have gone through pandemics. They've gone through global recessions, right? Whereas job security doesn't even register for millennials. It's all of a sudden pretty important again to Gen Z. So now if you take that and look, Gen X, baby boomers, you start to see the same thing. Unsurprisingly, things like growth potential, not very important to someone in the last stages of their career. A good location, a good work-life balance, some job security that they're going to be able to hit their retirement goals. Those are the things that they're looking for most.
Yeah. And I would add to that, in that one of the things that's really fascinating is that when we already, coming into this book, we already monitor worker profiles. And again, there's a lot of research to support this, that coming out of the pandemic, there has been a big psychological shift in that earliest worker, and so that worker who's, I would say, depending on the age, is anywhere between, let's call it, 18 to 23.
Yep.
That worker went through a shift where they saw so much of the market move into this period of uncertainty, and so there are a lot of I would say HR teams and a lot of recruiting managers that need to think differently about how we even position the ads that we do to promote for those junior roles. I was talking to a very large restorer, well-known name, and they said, so what are some of the things that, Leighton, that you think are most insightful about your survey? And I said, I'll tell you, I think one of the things that it made me think about is to stop thinking about, the worker who's 32 years old and we're trying to move them up in the company, and start realizing that for us to be a company that's resilient, the workers that we are going to be hiring, say 5 to 10 years from now, are in like grade 7 right now. They're in like grade 8. And it's hard to believe,
That is hard to believe.
but the people who we're going to be hiring in 5 to 10 years experience significant disruption, and it has altered their profile. And so we're starting to see that in the data. We're starting to see that in the results. And this study, as much as it is, I think, very eyebrow raising when you look at the data, and I do say data very specifically because there's a lot of people that I think have a lot of very subjective opinions on, well, it's because of this or that. But this is the first time where we've really looked at the data and we've said what's actually going on. And what we see is there are some people that have to make some really hard 180s in how they think about, I would say, filling the lower ranks and the mid ranks of their company. And fortunately, we've written it kind of like a playbook.
Yeah. And the only thing I would say, and again, this was, I almost, when we were going through this book, I considered this like found money for people looking for restorers right now, is we asked over 50 questions, but 2 of the questions we asked, what is the primary reason you accepted your role? So what were you looking for when you decided, yes, I will work at Restoration Company X versus Company Y versus an entirely different industry? And we saw everything from a good team culture to I want strong work-life balance. But then we also asked, okay, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the line, now you're in the industry, now you're working in this job. What is the most enjoyable part of your job? And especially among that field technician role, they said, by and large, it's helping other people, seeing the difference that I make every single day. None of the field workers said that is the reason they selected their role. They didn't even know that they were going to be encountering that. It's something they clearly valued, but they didn't know that that was something they should be looking for in a role, and that that was going to be something that they were going to be experiencing every single day until they were in the role. These are people that don't even know that your job could offer that. And once they're in, they say, this is one of the best parts of the job.
Yeah.
So what role did you find that communication played? Communication is so important. And we just came out of this age. Well, now there's more people working from home than ever, right? And so we've had to learn different ways to communicate. We're maybe not face to face as much. And these people are out in the field, different generations. And so what kind of threads did you see tied into the communication aspect?
Well, you know as well as we do that communication in this industry is intense. And when you're always responding to crisis, we're always in situations where it's hard to stay, calm and resolved and clear-minded and whatnot. So we'll look at some data in a second here, but one of the things I'll say is one of the biggest sources of frustration of workers is the communication between them and their managers. And when you look at that manager layer, so much of it would say, well, my world is so intense. But so much of it is, as we would say, we're workplace communication software essentially, and what we see and we've been seeing for a long time is very simply that it's hard to fight a two-front war, and when the work site is intense, and then in fact then the interactions are intense, and then you layer on top of that the way we interact is inefficient. it creates a lot of friction. And I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people will remember how you made them feel, and workers go home after these chaotic nights and they remember the chaos, but they also remember how they felt belittled, how they felt reprimanded. And let's look at some data.
Yeah. 2 data points that I want to point to. The first, we asked, let's dive in on the field worker who said, more than anything, my manager is the reason that I might leave. And we have direct quotes that say, like, on some days, my manager and I click really well. On other days, I'm debating quitting just because of an interaction with him. And so they said that when we asked, what would you change about your manager's approach? They said, we need to see improved communication from our managers and even their temperament. And so there's just personality issues. And that was 15% of almost every single age group that we asked said their manager had temperament issues. Just the way that they communicated left me, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here 6 months from now, a year from now. And so that was a really fascinating that I didn't expect, right? That just the soft skills of the manager beyond their communication skills, how they communicated, they're stressed out, they're fighting fires, and they walk in the office and then they, make everyone else feel the same heat that they're feeling. Now all of a sudden everyone else is, I'm not too sure if I want to go into battle with this person continually for the next year or so. Another area where this came up was when it came to onboarding. And so it would not surprise anyone that despite the best laid plans that everyone has for, day 1, day 14, day 30, as soon as a hurricane rips through town, a lot of those get thrown out the window. And so we asked what could have been improved during your onboarding experience. And the number one answer, I need more structure, right? I want to know that there's a plan in place here. This baptism by fire is not working for me. That's not why I got into this industry. No one said they signed up for the restoration industry because they love feeling like they're drowning every single day, right? It's when other people are drowning, I've got a plan to help them, right? Yeah.
Did you guys find anything being a tech company related to technology? Like people like having more technology in the workplace, or gosh, it's really hard to learn this new software that my owners are constantly changing or evolving, or the updates or whatever. Did you find anything related to that?
We did. And I think the general term would be people are really battling for focus, like the workers' focus and the scattered focus. And I think that sometimes you just have a worker who will describe that they just have mental fatigue. Yeah. And so, it's when you layer on the fact that the work itself by nature is stressful, it's high urgency. There's a lot of, I would say taxed adrenal glands in this industry, but specifically to the software. Now, I would say at a macro trend, software is increasingly moving towards kind of best in class. I would say in the same way that your tool belt doesn't have a lot of tools that do, will hammer, screw, and file, there are specific tools for each component. What you see software moving towards that. And a lot of it is just because there's more of a movement toward best in class software service. Yep. But to the worker, really the biggest challenge is that in a moment of stress, even if I've been provided with great training, the challenge comes down to, I don't always remember when I'm supposed to use that software product. And it's been a little while since I've used it or produced that report. And so I don't remember how to use that. And so, as a software vendor, I mean, that's a big part of what we do is that we add, we kind of facilitate the overarching roadmap that all activity falls into. But the data was also very revealing. So,
yeah. And just to say, when we specifically asked, did you feel after 2 weeks that you knew what you needed to know to succeed in your role? By and large, the answer was no. And when we asked, okay, what was it you wish you knew more of? The software was the thing that came up the most. There's so much software I need to learn, and there's so many menus and fields and forms. And I just felt overwhelmed, regardless of how many years I've been in the industry, regardless of my skill set on any given task, just the sheer amount of software. And so that was really revealing for us. And I think also validating that the problem that we're solving at KnowHow, just making sure you always know step by step what you need to do, was one that was going to make a difference.
Okay. I'm curious what the number one most interesting thing was to you both. Well, Travis is like, I know what my number one most interesting thing is. Leighton's pondering it. Do you know?
It's hard because you said it, like there's almost 200 pages of information here. Like we really tried to not pull any punches. Like it's a really thick read. Like I wouldn't know, but I would estimate that it might be one of the most thorough research projects ever done in the industry, and it's very timely because right now when we speak to our clients, they are not in a quantity of work problem. They are in a capacity of workforce problem, and that is what we hear is that companies say I have more work than I can take. But at the end of the day, I just don't know if I have the capacity. And so I think that, there's a lot of macro trends that happen that are driving these labor intensive industries. One is that you're seeing a steep rise in the complexity and the regulation requirements in these industries. But at the same time, you're seeing almost an opposing inflection point where you're seeing the smartest people in the industry are transitioning out. And as much as we love it, they're not writing books, they're just kind of hanging it up and saying, I did my time. And then at the same time, the worker today, the way that they prefer to learn is very different. Our devices, and I like to tell our clients that, hey, I appreciate that you love that like learning management system or that binder or that slide deck, but 25,000 engineers employed by Google, Facebook, Instagram, getting paid $250,000 a year are competing against you, telling the worker how knowledge should serve them. And so when you think about that macro trend, I think that some of the most interesting things is basically just the misalignment that exists between managers and senior leaders and the worker. And I think that there's a lot of individuals who I think have just really leaned on that crutch of, well, this is the way it's always been. And over time, we see things kind of get on side. Or, I had to learn this way. And you know what? The fact of the matter is that the curve of technology, the curve of change in society does not match the curve that when they got started. So again, maybe just to land the ship, what I found was most interesting is how clearly the data seemed to point to how many very stubborn, entrenched leaders in the industry are going to get completely blindsided. And one of our predictions, Michelle, and some people disagree with us, but one of our predictions is that companies that fail to really adapt to the new profile of the worker who's entering in the marketplace, they may not be here in 6 to 8 years. Yeah. And a lot of people don't believe that. But you know what? There once was a Blockbuster.
There once was a Blockbuster. And they could have sold to who? Netflix or somebody.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, there once was a Kodak, right? Yeah. And they said, no, this is our core business. Our core business is developing film, and they said this digital thing's just going to pass. And at the end of the day, I think that there's a lot of individuals I think that will read this book, and if they take a sobering look in the mirror, they're going to say, look, insert your company's name. I don't want someone to say, whatever happened to XYZ restoration, and these are companies that run on hands and feet. They run on human muscle, and if you cannot bring in that human muscle, you'll either be competing for a increasingly smaller and smaller pool of individuals who will settle for working in chaos. But at the same time, you're seeing insurance requirements rise in terms of their need to stick the landing on each project, and it's a real wake-up call. So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying I think that there is a real wake-up call coming for people in the industry.
I was ready to go. I'm going to hand you this. Okay, so on page 130, this, if you want to do that, this is what I found to be the most fascinating. And so page 130 for everyone who goes out and buys the book. And 130 and 132, so we had an appendix where we really looked at the segmentation between women and men in the industry and how they answered. And so some of the demographic questions we asked, is just age, but then B, how long have you been in the industry? And so unsurprisingly, baby boomers, Gen X, predominantly male, millennials skew slightly male. But at the bottom end of millennials and Gen Z, you're almost seeing a 50-50 split between males and females. And when you look on the next page, when it talks about how long you've been in the industry, 70% of women have been in the industry less than 3 years. But among people who have been in the industry for less than 1 year, it's 48% women and 52% men. So this latest batch of people entering the restoration industry is almost a 50-50 split gender-wise, which I thought was fascinating because it certainly defies the stereotype that you would think.
And one of the things I'll quickly say is that one of the things we looked into is a topic that I think a lot of people kind of shy away from, which is the question of, really what are some of the things that your workplace does to make this a good place and a good environment for women to work? And hey, I've been in kind of like industries where you swing hammers all day, and I'll be the first to say that I've worked in environments where I would say, a woman probably wouldn't feel super comfortable, right? Or they might feel like a bit of an outsider. And so it's interesting because there's so many opportunities in our study that and I hope I can articulate this really concisely, because I think it's super important, is that if a restorer would be able to set aside their biases, set aside kind of these entrenched perspectives, and look at some of these different ways of thinking about the data as, what, this isn't super expensive. All I have to do is just kind of change the way I think about things. And I can immediately drive an enormous wedge of competitive opportunity between me and my competitor. And it's just simply a matter of realizing that, women are flooding into the industry. And just there's some things that just don't fly anymore, right? And the same point is realizing that the worker profile cares about structure in a way that we didn't think that they did at this point. And so if a person can just embrace that, you can, I think, over a period of as short as 24 months, you can drive such a substantive wedge between you and your competitor that I honestly think Google reviews will take care of the rest and just bury your competitor, because customers don't tolerate poor service anymore. Anyways, lots to say.
There are a lot of companies out there now finding that, which you have in the study, pay is not everything. And there are companies, in tough markets where the competitor on the street could be offering $4 or $5 an hour more. But if you're at a good company culture, you can find that those employees are staying with the company that they're at for less because it's better long-term. They're happy, they're rewarded, they're fulfilled, and they know maybe going down the street, well, they're going to be working crazy hours and have, no respect, whatever. So money's not everything. I think I recruited for 4 years in the industry. I think you guys know that. And I think sometimes owners got caught up in the pay, managers got caught up in the pay. And it's like, well, you guys, that's not everything. You got to look at the big picture and what people want. And it's changing, as you guys said, through the generations. Okay. Anything about the study that you want to say that we haven't talked about yet? And I want you guys to talk about your industry partners that you had. CNR was just one of them. So I want you guys to give some shout outs too.
Yeah. So while Travis jumps to that part of the book, we didn't do this alone. We had some tremendous help from some very well-known names, and so we need to give a shout out to Business Mentors, obviously your team at CNR, Core Group, Violand, Amy, Ed and his team at the Restoration Lawyer, Norris's team at Gearhart Associates, R&R, Restoration Mediation, Blue Collar Nation, Eric and Larry, and then also Lisa's team at Restoration Technical Institute. So yeah, it's a good group. Yeah, it was a good group. And you know what? No, we were really we were really proud of the team that came together, and we had a lot of common denominators as people realize that this is a big thing. But you know what? There's a lot we could say, but I think that one of the things that I hope that people will take from the book is that there is so much opportunity to be able to make some substantial changes. And you made this comment about pay, and I think we would all agree that you have to pay someone a reasonable wage. This isn't a recipe book on how to totally skimp on wages, but it's assuming that you do have, you run into margin issues and you have to kind of, pick your lane on what you can pay. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that what we see is that workers are bringing to the workplace, especially new workers, something that is hard for, I think, owners and business managers sometimes to embrace, is simply this, is that people are applying to work a desire for belonging in a way that people haven't in the past. Yeah. And now I think there's a lot of things that weigh into that. I think the pandemic had an enormous, it was an enormous reflection of people's true social connections. And I think a lot of particularly young workers realize that they actually don't have some of what I would call just the social sinew that maybe someone who's of an older vintage might have. They may not be part of a faith community. They may not volunteer. Volunteer levels are very low in some of the early ranks. They weren't able to connect with friends. And so that work community, they realize, could be their principal community. And so for an employer to say, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this whole idea, as we're sitting here talking, we have this massive ATI banner that says family. You know what? ATI's onto something, right? And now that's not, I know they're not saying that, just they're very sincere when they say that. Like they really figured it out. Like it's really family. But it's amazing how workers today, they desire things from work that some owners, I think, might at first glance be a little uncomfortable providing and say, I don't know if that's my role. And the reality is that if you can step into that role and step into that expectation, you can drive really high retention rates with young workers. Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is that I personally find a ton of fulfillment in the work that I do. I get to work hard. We're working, there's lots going on right here. Exactly. This isn't just a Zoom background behind us. Yeah. Yeah. It's going to look great.
Sunbelt's booth is currently being erected by a piece of equipment not rented by Sunbelt. I'm just saying.
It's calling you out. It's calling you out. Yeah. That's funny. I personally find a ton of fulfillment in the work that I do. We get to work hard to make work better for other people. And so many workers today, regardless of the industry, whether they're in restoration, construction, tech, something else, they're looking for that fulfillment. And one of the questions we asked, what is the least fulfilling aspect of your role? And I said, just work is tedious. And what emerged was that so many workers in the restoration industry do not understand the bigger impact of the work that they're doing. And so it's not being communicated that, hey, you're turning people's lives around, right? On the worst days of someone's life, you are helping them rebuild that and bring their home back to normal and restore some normalcy for them. And so if this book helps the frontline worker, the office administrator, the mid-level manager at a restoration company feel a little bit more empowered and feeling like they're making a difference in the work that they're doing, that's going to be a big success in my opinion.
And then maybe it sparked one thought. So what Travis was saying sparked something that I was just rereading the book on my flight in, and something that really stood out to me is this is an industry like few industries that has amazing before and after pictures.
Yes.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think there's even awards for it later tonight, which is or tomorrow, which is the biggest transformation. And it's pretty significant.
Yep.
You know what? It's amazing how I would say if a person is listening to this recording and they were wondering, what is a super tangible thing that I can do, is when you're sitting down with a worker, show them before and after pictures of what you do and show them the transformation you have in people's lives. But also, and I haven't seen anyone do this, also roll in case studies of people on your team that have also been transformed, right? Yeah. To be able to say, this individual came to us just like you, really inspired by these photos. But look, 2 years later, these are the skills that they have that they didn't have then. Look at even just their composure in those two photos. Look at the confidence that's coming through them. That could be you. And so we do case studies on the projects we do. But to do case studies on the people that we grow is something that is being underutilized, and the data supports that and 100 other things that are just hanging out there in this book like low-hanging fruit. We built the book in a very tactical way, so because people in this industry don't have a lot of time. Yeah.
They should be able to pick it apart pretty quickly. I mean, with all the graphs and everything in there, it's very easy to digest. It's not like it's a dry read. Okay, so this is a dangerous question. Any idea what's next?
Ooh, the next study.
Okay, yeah. TBD. That's fair.
I will tell you that if there's anything that a research oriented team wants is they say, you know what? You look at all the responses and immediately you say, it'd be awesome to talk to that guy and really dig into that. And so I do think that there are lots more rocks that we could turn. I think that, so that's one. Now, just off the top of my head, one thing that is very interesting is that, and I heard Dan Cassera talking about this on another item, and I think it was very intuitive, is that I think there are individuals that have come through just the meat grinder of the last 2 years, and I think that the mental toll is real, and I think that they're in this industry. I think there is a deep undercurrent of workaholism. There's a deep undercurrent of how this type of work really just, I think, puts a lot of relationships and marriages through the meat grinder. And that's an area of interest, because I can tell you that when we go do sales events like this, one of the stakeholders that always comes up to us and says, I can't thank KnowHow enough, are spouses, because they come up and they say, ever since our company got KnowHow and my partner is not the source of all how-to, we actually have dinners together. Like we finally had a vacation where we weren't like, where he didn't be like, just a second, daddy sees you, like that, I mean, and so I'm not saying that, what I'm saying is that when companies come to us and they say, like we burn out people because we demand too much, but the industry demands too much. And so I think that there's something in that, to dig into the mental toll, because so much of the mental health topic, I think, is very gray, and you have to be very cautious in how you dig into it. And so, we have a very, I would say, robust methodology in how we approach research. And so maybe, right? Maybe. It's interesting, I don't know if you think it's interesting.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So for people who want to get a copy of the book, they can go to whyworkersquit.com. Am I right? Whyworkersquit.com. So it's the title of the book. It's pretty easy to remember. You can also, if you go to the CNR website, cnrmagazine.com, you can find the cover story, and there is a QR code to get the book in there. If you are at the RIA show, because this will be coming out while the show is still going on, be sure to stop by the KnowHow booth. You can check it out there. You can grab a copy of CNR to read kind of the synopsis before you dive into the book. So you guys, thank you very much for letting me partner with you. It was a joy working with you guys. You have an amazing team and you have some amazing research, and I look forward to what's to come.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.